Alexandra Stone's eyes narrowed as her car rolled to a stop in front of the imposing glass fortress that housed Yates Industries. She gripped her steering wheel, her manicured nails tapping against the leather as she mentally prepared for what could be the most challenging client of her consulting career. Alexander Yates, the once celebrated business prodigy turned struggling CEO, was notoriously difficult, impatient, and according to industry gossip absolutely unbearable to work with. Just another client, she whispered to herself, gathering her leather portfolio and stepping out of her car. The autumn wind whipped around her as she straightened her charcoal blazer. At 32, Sophia Greenfield had built a reputation as the miracle worker of corporate turnarounds. Her consulting firm, Phoenix Solutions, specialized in rescuing companies on the brink of disaster, companies exactly like Yates Industries. The security guard at the entrance checked her ID, his expression softening. "Miss Greenfield, they're expecting you on the executive floor." "Mr. Yates doesn't like to be kept waiting." "No one ever does," she replied with a polite smile, stepping into the elevator. When the doors opened to the executive floor, Sophia immediately sensed the tension. Employees moved quickly, speaking in hushed tones, shoulders hunched as if anticipating criticism from any direction. The gleaming corridors belied the company's financial reality. Yates Industries was hemorrhaging money and market share at an alarming rate. "Miss Greenfield." A harried-looking assistant appeared at her side. "I'm Tracy. Mr. Yates is on a call but insisted you be brought straight to his office. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee, a bulletproof vest?" The last part was whispered with a nervous laugh. "Just water, thank you," Sophia replied, following her through the labyrinth of glass offices. Alexander Yates's office occupied the corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. When Sophia entered, he was standing with his back to the door, one hand holding his phone to his ear, the other gesturing emphatically at the skyline. Even from behind, she could tell he was tall and broad-shouldered, his posture radiating authority in his perfectly tailored navy suit. "I don't care what the board thinks, Martin. I built this company from nothing and I'm not letting it fail on my watch." His voice was deep, controlled, but with an unmistakable edge of frustration. "The consultant arrives today. We'll discuss this later." He ended the call and turned, his steel-gray eyes immediately finding Sophia's. For a moment, neither spoke. Alexander Yates was younger than she had expected, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair peppered with premature silver at the temples and a strong jawline currently set in a grim expression. "Miss Greenfield, I presume?" His voice was cool as he extended his hand. "You're punctual." "That's a promising start." Sophia took his hand, noting his firm grip. "Mr. Yates, thank you for trusting Phoenix Solutions with your company's future." "Trust is earned, not given," he replied, gesturing to the seating area by the window. "And frankly, I'm not convinced I need outside help at all. This was the board's idea." Sophia chose a chair and placed her portfolio on the glass coffee table between them. "Then I appreciate your time even more. Shall we get straight to business, please?" He sat across from her, one ankle resting on the opposite knee, his expression unreadable. "Tell me why I shouldn't consider this meeting a waste of my very valuable time." Sophia had dealt with difficult executives before, but something about Alexander Yates's dismissive attitude ignited her competitive spirit. "Because Yates Industries has lost 30% of its market value in 18 months. Your flagship product line is being outperformed by 3 competitors, and your employee turnover rate is nearly double the industry standard." She paused, noting the slight tightening around his eyes. "And because despite all that, I believe this company can be saved." For a long moment he studied her, his expression inscrutable. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You've done your homework, always. And you think you have the solutions I haven't already considered." "I don't know yet," she admitted candidly. but I have a proven methodology and a fresh perspective. Sometimes that's what a company needs most, someone who can see the forest when everyone inside is focused on individual trees. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost forming a smile before he caught himself. You have 2 weeks, Miss Greenfield. After that, if I'm not impressed, we part ways and I handle this my own way. 2 weeks is non-negotiable. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Tracy will show you to the office we've prepared. You'll have access to all department heads and any data you require. I expect daily updates. As Tracy led her to a surprisingly spacious office down the hall, Sophia mentally adjusted her timeline. 2 weeks to diagnose and begin treating a corporate illness that had been festering for over a year was nearly impossible. But Sophia Greenfield didn't build her reputation by backing down from impossible challenges. The next morning, Sophia arrived at 7:30 a.m., determined to make every hour count. To her surprise, Alexander was already in his office, his desk lamp illuminating stacks of reports. When she knocked on his open door, he glanced up, momentarily looking disoriented, as if he'd been lost in thought. "You're here early," he observed, running a hand through his slightly disheveled hair. "So are you." She stepped into his office, noting the empty coffee cups and the suit jacket draped over a chair. "Did you go home last night? This company doesn't run itself." He straightened, immediately recovering his professional demeanor. "What can I do for you, Miss Greenfield?" "I'd like to start with a tour. Not the sanitized version you'd give to investors. I want to see how things really operate. Production floors, break rooms, customer service centers, the places where the actual work happens." He checked his watch. "I have meetings all morning. Reschedule them." She held his gaze steadily. "If you want me to save your company, I need to understand it, and for that I need you to show me." Alexander looked as though he was about to refuse, but then he sighed, reaching for his phone. "Tracy, clear my morning schedule." He paused. "Yes, all of it." "And have the car brought around." An hour later, Sophia found herself walking beside Alexander through Yates Industries' main manufacturing facility. Employees straightened as they passed, some nodding respectfully, others watching warily. Alexander moved through the space with obvious familiarity, greeting several workers by name, asking specific questions about their projects. "You know your operation well," Sophia observed as they moved between workstations. "I started on these floors," he replied, his eyes scanning the machinery. "My father believed in learning the business from the ground up." "Your father founded the company?" Alexander nodded, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Arthur Yates. Started with one small factory making specialized computer components. By the time I took over 5 years ago, we were in 3 countries with 6 major product lines." "And now?" Sophia asked gently, his jaw tightened. "Now we're closing facilities and losing market share to companies that didn't even exist when I was learning this business." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "That's why you're here, isn't it? To tell me where I went wrong." "I'm here to help identify problems and find solutions," she corrected. "Success or failure rarely comes down to just one person, Mr. Yates, even if that person is the CEO." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or the barest hint of appreciation for her candor. Before he could respond, a loud crash came from nearby, followed by shouting. Alexander immediately moved toward the commotion, Sophia following closely behind. They found a group of workers gathered around a fallen shelf unit, boxes of components scattered across the floor. A young man was holding his arm, his face pale. "What happened?" Alexander demanded, his voice sharp. An older worker stepped forward. "Shelf gave way, sir. We've been asking maintenance to fix it for weeks." Alexander's expression darkened. "Who's the supervisor here?" A nervous-looking man in a button-down shirt hurried over. "Mr. Yates, I can explain later," Alexander cut him off, turning to the injured worker. "Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, sir," the young man mumbled, clearly intimidated. "Just a bruise." Alexander seemed unconvinced. Go to the medical office anyway, and you, he addressed the supervisor, my office, 2 hours. As they walked away, Sophia observed communication breakdown between departments, apparently, Alexander replied tersely. Or resource allocation issues, she suggested. When companies start cutting costs, maintenance is often first to suffer. It seems small until equipment fails or someone gets hurt. He glanced at her sharply. We haven't cut maintenance budgets. But has the budget kept pace with your growth or with the aging of your facilities? Alexander didn't answer immediately, and Sophia could almost see him mentally reviewing budget allocations. That's a fair question, he finally admitted, one I should have asked sooner. By lunchtime, they had toured 2 facilities and were heading toward the research and development building. In the car, Alexander was quieter, occasionally making notes on his tablet. Your employees respect you, Sophia said, breaking the silence. That's more valuable than you might realize. He looked up, surprised by the observation. They're good people, dedicated, but dedication isn't enough if our products aren't competitive. He set his tablet down. Our latest product line was supposed to revolutionize how businesses handle data security. Instead, it's been plagued with delays and technical issues. Show me, she said simply. The R&D facility was smaller but more modern than the manufacturing plants. Alexander led her to a secure lab where a team of engineers was working on what looked like circuit boards and specialized hardware. This is our next-gen security suite, he explained, his voice taking on a different quality, pride mixed with concern. It's designed to provide hardware-level security for enterprise systems. Sophia listened intently as he explained the technical aspects, noting how animated he became when discussing the technology itself. This wasn't just business to him, it was clearly a passion. After the engineers demonstrated the system and its current limitations, Sophia asked if she could speak with the team privately. Alexander hesitated but eventually agreed, leaving her alone with the development team. Okay, she said once he was gone. Talk to me honestly. What's really holding this project back? The engineers exchanged glances before the lead developer spoke up. Resources, mainly. We lost 3 key team members to competitors last year. Mr. Yates authorized replacements, but HR has been slow to fill the positions. And then there's the approval process for any changes. By the time Alexander returned, Sophia had filled several pages of her notebook. The ride back to headquarters was filled with thoughtful silence, each processing what they'd observed. What's your initial assessment? Alexander finally asked as they pulled into the company parking garage. You have fundamental strengths, dedicated employees, solid core technology, a respected brand. But there are structural issues hampering your ability to execute. Departmental silos, resource misallocation, and decision-making bottlenecks. She turned to face him directly. And there's something else. What? You're trying to do too much yourself. Every decision, big or small, seems to require your approval. That creates bottlenecks and frustrates your teams. His expression hardened. Because I'm ultimately responsible for every outcome. Responsibility doesn't have to mean direct control of every decision, she countered. Effective leadership is often about enabling others to make good decisions, not making all the decisions yourself. For a moment, she thought he might dismiss her observation outright. Instead, he took a deep breath. Let's continue this discussion tomorrow. I have board calls this afternoon. That evening, Sophia worked late in her temporary office, organizing her notes and beginning to formulate a turnaround strategy. Around 9 p.m., a knock at her door surprised her. Alexander stood there, his tie loosened, holding 2 paper bags. You're still here, he observed. So are you, she countered. I brought food, figured you might not have eaten. He set one of the bags on her desk. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches from the deli across the street. Sophia couldn't hide her surprise at the gesture. Thank you, that's thoughtful. He shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. Professional courtesy. Mind if I join you? We could discuss your findings so far. Over sandwiches and bottled water, Sophia shared her preliminary observations. Alexander listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions or providing additional context. As the conversation flowed, she noticed subtle changes in his demeanor, a relaxation of his guarded expression, more animated gestures as he explained certain aspects of the business. "My father would have liked you," he said unexpectedly, after she'd outlined a potential reorganization of the product development pipeline. "Oh," he valued straightforwardness, "said you can't fix what you won't acknowledge is broken." Alexander's eyes seemed to focus on something distant. "He built this company with that philosophy?" "Tell me about him," Sophia found herself saying. Alexander hesitated, as if weighing whether this crossed some professional boundary. Then his expression softened. "Arthur Yates was a brilliant engineer and a terrible businessman, at least at first. He created groundbreaking technology, but couldn't market it effectively. Nearly went bankrupt twice before figuring it out. He used to say his greatest achievement wasn't the company, but learning to be humble enough to recognize his own limitations. Is that why the board brought me in?" "They think you need to learn the same lesson," the question hung in the air between them. Alexander's jaw tightened, but then he surprised her with a small, rueful smile. "Probably, and they might not be entirely wrong." The admission, small as it was, felt like a significant breakthrough. Sophia found herself smiling back at him, suddenly aware of how the office had grown quiet, the only sounds coming from the building's ventilation system and the distant hum of traffic outside. "It's getting late," she said, gathering up their empty food containers. "Thank you for dinner." "And for the insight," he nodded, standing. "Same time tomorrow. There's more I want to show you." The next several days fell into a rhythm. Mornings were spent touring different aspects of the business, afternoons in meetings with key personnel, and evenings reviewing findings. Alexander was present for most of it, increasingly open to Sophia's observations and questions. By the end of the first week, they had identified several critical areas for immediate improvement. "Your customer service department is understaffed and under-resourced," Sophia explained during their Friday evening debrief. "Yet they're your frontline with clients. The feedback they receive rarely makes it to product development, creating a disconnect between what customers need and what you're building." Alexander nodded, making notes. "We can restructure the reporting lines, create a more direct channel between customer feedback and development." "Exactly. And your employee retention issue is directly related to our compensation structure, which hasn't kept pace with the industry," he finished. "I've already asked HR to prepare a comprehensive review." Sophia smiled, impressed by how quickly he was implementing changes. "You work fast." "When something makes sense, why wait?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her suddenly self-conscious. "You know, when the board insisted on bringing in a consultant, I expected someone with an MBA and a lot of theories but no practical understanding of what we do. You've surprised me. In a good way, I hope. Definitely." His eyes held hers a moment longer than necessary before he glanced at his watch. "It's Friday night, we should probably call it a day." An unexpected feeling of disappointment surfaced as Sophia began gathering her things. "Of course, you probably have plans." "Actually, I don't," he hesitated. "Do you have plans, I mean?" The question caught her off guard. "Just takeout and catching up on emails." "Would you consider having dinner instead? There's a restaurant near here that makes excellent pasta." When she didn't immediately respond, he added, "To discuss the progress we've made this week, of course." "Of course," she echoed, aware of a slight flutter in her stomach that was decidedly unprofessional. Dinner would be nice. The restaurant was small and intimate, with warm lighting and a quiet atmosphere that felt distinctly non-businesslike. As they were seated at a corner table, Sophia found herself noticing details about Alexander she'd previously overlooked, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled genuinely. The careful way he considered the wine list before making a selection. "So," he said after they'd ordered, "tell me about Sophia Greenfield outside of Phoenix Solutions. What do you do when you're not rescuing failing businesses?" She laughed softly. "Is this part of your due diligence on your consultant? Call it curiosity." His smile was warm, transforming his usually serious face. "Well, I'm embarrassingly ordinary outside of work. I read a lot, mostly historical fiction. I have a small garden on my apartment balcony that I neglect terribly, and I volunteer at a women's business mentoring program twice a month." "That doesn't sound ordinary at all." He sipped his wine. "The mentoring program, is that how you got started in consulting?" "Actually, yes. I was in corporate finance originally, but I kept finding myself drawn to the strategic side of things. When I helped turn around a struggling division at my previous company, I realized I had a knack for seeing patterns and solutions others missed." She tilted her head, studying him. "What about you? Did you always know you'd take over your father's company?" Something flickered in his expression, a complexity of emotion she couldn't quite read. "It was always the plan, but not necessarily what I would have chosen initially. I studied engineering because I loved it, not because of the family business. I wanted to create things, solve problems. And now I spend most of my time in meetings and reviewing reports." He gave a wry smile. "But when things are working right, when we launch a product that makes a real difference for our clients, there's nothing quite like it." As the evening progressed, their conversation drifted further from business. Sophia found herself laughing at Alexander's surprisingly dry humor, fascinated by his insights on everything from architecture to classical music. By dessert, she was acutely aware of how much she was enjoying his company and how problematic that could be professionally. "I should probably get going," she said after they'd finished their coffee. "Early start tomorrow. It's Saturday," he pointed out. "Failing businesses don't take weekends off," she replied with a small smile. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Let me drive you home at least." "That's not necessary, humor me." His tone was gentle but firm. "It's late and cabs can be hard to find in this neighborhood." The drive to her apartment was quiet, a comfortable silence that felt strangely intimate. When they arrived, Alexander insisted on walking her to her door. "Thank you for dinner," Sophia said as they reached her apartment, "and for being open to the changes we've discussed this week. Not every CEO is willing to listen the way you have. Thank you for not giving up on Yates Industries, or on me." He stood close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of his cologne. "Good night, Sophia." The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Good night, Alexander." For a suspended moment, neither moved. Then he stepped back, nodded once, and turned to leave. Sophia watched him go, trying to ignore the confusing mix of emotions his presence had stirred. The second week of the consultation brought increasing momentum to the turnaround efforts. Changes were being implemented across departments, and early results were promising. Sophia and Alexander spent long days moving between meetings, often working through lunch, their professional relationship evolving into an effective partnership. But there was something else evolving too, something neither acknowledged openly. It manifested in small ways. The brush of hands when passing documents, lingering eye contact during discussions, the way they gravitated toward each other in group settings. On Wednesday afternoon, they were reviewing the latest financial projections in Alexander's office when Tracy interrupted with an urgent message. "Mr. Yates, Marcus Reynolds from Vertex Tech is here. He's insisting on seeing you immediately." Alexander's expression darkened. "Send him in." Sophia recognized the name. Vertex Tech was one of Yates Industries' main competitors, known for aggressive business tactics and poaching top talent. Marcus Reynolds entered with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. He was older than Alexander, impeccably dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Alex, sorry to drop in unannounced, but I was in the building for another meeting and thought we should talk directly." "About what?" Alexander's tone was cool. Reynolds glanced at Sophia. "Perhaps privately." Miss Greenfield is advising me on company matters. Anything you have to say can be said in front of her. Reynolds shrugged. Fine by me. I'll be direct. We're prepared to make an offer for Yates Industries' security division. A generous one given the current circumstances. Alexander's jaw tightened visibly. The security division isn't for sale. Everything has a price, Alex, and let's be honest, you're struggling. The market knows it, your investors know it. I'm offering a dignified exit for that division before things get worse. Reynolds placed a folder on Alexander's desk. Our preliminary offer, review it with your board. I think you'll find it more than fair. After Reynolds departed, Alexander stood motionless, staring at the unopened folder on his desk. You're not considering it, Sophia said, recognizing the turmoil in his expression. The security division was my father's pride, the last product line he developed before he died. He ran a hand through his hair. But it's also our most troubled division right now. Sophia approached him, standing closer than strictly necessary. The security division has the greatest potential for growth if we implement the changes we've discussed. Reynolds knows that it's why he wants it. Alexander looked at her, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. We. The slip hadn't been intentional, but Sophia didn't correct herself. Yes, I'm committed to this turnaround, Alexander, all of it. His gaze held hers, the moment stretching between them with unspoken possibilities. Then his phone rang, breaking the spell. As he answered it, Sophia stepped back, trying to regain her professional focus. That evening, Sophia stayed late again, finalizing her comprehensive turnaround plan. The deadline for her official consultation was approaching, and despite the progress they'd made, there was still so much to do. A knock at her door revealed Alexander, looking unusually hesitant. I'm not interrupting? No, come in. She gestured to a chair. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my formal recommendations. He sat but seemed distracted, his usual focus replaced with a pensive expression. Reynolds's offer has the board interested. They've called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. And I've been thinking about what you said about the division's potential. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I don't want to sell. But I need to show the board a viable path forward, something more concrete than promises of improvement. Sophia nodded, understanding the pressure he was under. We can accelerate the timeline on some of the key changes, demonstrate immediate impact. I need more than that. His eyes met hers, intense and determined. I need you to present to the board with me, your expertise, your confidence in the turnaround. It could make the difference. The board respects outside perspectives, especially from someone with your track record. Sophia considered the request. I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. You have to promise me that whatever the board decides, you won't give up on what you believe is right for this company. It's not just your father's legacy, it's yours too. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, followed by a warmth that transformed his features. You have more faith in me than I probably deserve. I have faith in what I've seen, she replied simply. A leader who cares about his people and his company's purpose, not just its profits. He studied her for a long moment, then stood abruptly. I should let you get back to work. Early start tomorrow for the board meeting. But instead of leaving, he paused by her desk, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sophia, when this consultation is over, let's focus on saving your company first, she interrupted gently, her heart racing at what he might have been about to say. He nodded, accepting the boundary. Good night then, and thank you. After he left, Sophia sat motionless, trying to ignore the complicated emotions his presence had stirred. She had crossed a line from professional distance to personal investment, not just in Yates Industries' success, but in Alexander's as well. The board meeting the next morning was tense from the start. The directors, mostly older men who had served since Arthur Yates's time, listened with varying degrees of skepticism as Alexander presented the progress they'd made and the path forward. When Sophia's turn came, she approached the presentation not as a consultant, but as someone who believed deeply in what she was saying. She outlined the changes already implemented, the early positive results, and most importantly, the untapped potential of the security division that Reynolds was so eager to acquire. Gentlemen, what Vertex Tech sees is what I see: a division with groundbreaking technology that simply needs the right structure and resources to dominate the market. Selling now would be leaving millions on the table and surrendering your competitive advantage in a rapidly growing sector. The questions were tough, occasionally bordering on hostile, but Sophia held her ground. Throughout it all, she was aware of Alexander watching her, his expression a mix of admiration and something more personal that made her pulse quicken. After nearly 2 hours, the board chairman called for a vote. The tension in the room was palpable as hands were raised. When the final count was announced, a narrow margin against selling. Alexander's relief was visible in the slight slump of his shoulders. As they exited the boardroom, he touched her elbow lightly. "That was incredible. You were incredible." "We're not out of the woods yet," she reminded him. "The vote buys us time, but we still need to deliver results. We will." His confidence seemed renewed, his energy restored. "I have something important to discuss with you." "Dinner tonight, Alexander, strictly business," he assured her, though his eyes suggested otherwise. The restaurant he chose was even more intimate than their previous dinner location, a small, elegant place tucked away on a quiet street. As they were seated, Sophia felt a growing awareness that this dinner felt different from their work meetings. After they ordered, Alexander reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. "This is for you." Sophia opened it to find a check, a substantial one made out to Phoenix Solutions. "The consultation fee, but we still have a few days left in the agreement. Consider it early payment for services brilliantly rendered," he smiled. "The board was impressed enough to authorize an additional budget for implementing your recommendations." "That's wonderful news. But that's not actually why I asked you to dinner." He took a deep breath. "Sophia, I want to offer you a permanent position at Yates Industries." This was unexpected. "What kind of position?" "Chief Strategic Officer. A new role, reporting directly to me with authority to continue and expand the changes we've begun. The salary would be significantly more than what Phoenix Solutions is billing us." Sophia stared at him, processing the offer. "Alexander, I'm flattered, but my consulting firm could continue operating with you in an advisory capacity," he suggested. "This is a chance to see your vision for Yates Industries through to completion, to be part of something transformative." There was genuine passion in his voice, and Sophia found herself tempted by more than just the professional opportunity. Over the past 2 weeks, she had grown to admire not just Alexander's business acumen but the man himself, his dedication, his intelligence, the glimpses of vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. "Can I think about it?" she asked finally. "Of course." He reached across the table, his fingers lightly touching hers. "But there's something else I need to say, and it has nothing to do with business offers." Sophia felt her heart rate accelerate. "Alexander, these past 2 weeks have been unexpected," he continued, his voice lower, more intimate. "I brought you in to save my company, but something else has happened, something I wasn't looking for." "We've been working closely under high-pressure circumstances," she said carefully. "It's natural to form a bond." "Is that all this is to you, a professional bond?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. She looked into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, and found she couldn't dissemble. "No, but it complicates things." "Life is complicated," he said simply. "That doesn't mean we should avoid the things that matter." Before she could respond, their food arrived, creating a momentary reprieve from the intensity of the conversation. As they ate, they spoke of lighter things: books they'd enjoyed, places they'd traveled, music they loved. With each passing minute, Sophia felt the walls of professional distance crumbling further. After dinner, Alexander suggested a walk along the nearby riverfront. The night was clear and cool, the city lights reflecting on the water. They strolled side by side, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. My father used to say that business was about more than balance sheets and profit margins, Alexander said as they paused at a viewing point overlooking the water. He believed it was about creating something of value, something that outlasts you. He sounds like a wise man. He was. Alexander turned to face her, his expression earnest in the soft lighting. Sophia, whether or not you accept the position, I need you to know something. Meeting you has changed me, changed how I see my company, my role in it, changed how I see my future. The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. Alexander, let me finish. I know this is unexpected, probably inappropriate given our professional relationship. But life doesn't always follow the proper protocols. He took a step closer. I'm falling for you, Sophia, and I hope you might feel something too. The admission hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Sophia knew the professional response would be to establish boundaries, to remind him of their business relationship. But standing there, looking into his eyes, professional considerations seemed increasingly irrelevant compared to what her heart was telling her. I do feel something, she admitted quietly, but it's complicated. Your company is my client. There are ethical considerations. The consultation ends officially in 3 days. After that, you're free to make your decision about the job offer and about us without any professional conflict. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. All I'm asking is that you consider the possibility. The warmth of his hand around hers felt right in a way that defied logical explanation. I'll consider it, she promised. The final days of the consultation were a careful dance of professional focus and growing personal awareness. They worked diligently to implement the remaining high-priority changes, both hyperconscious of the impending end of their official relationship. On the last day, Sophia presented her final report to Alexander and his executive team. The meeting was a success, with clear paths forward and measurable improvements already visible in key areas. As the executives filed out, congratulating Sophia on her work, Alexander remained behind. So, he said when they were alone, this concludes our professional engagement. It does. Sophia gathered her materials, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been in years. Have you thought about my offer, both of them? She nodded, having spent sleepless nights weighing her options. I have. And I've decided that I can't accept the CSO position. His expression fell, though he tried to hide his disappointment. I understand, your consulting firm is important to you. It is, but that's not the only reason. She took a deep breath. If I were to work here permanently, reporting to you, it would always complicate whatever personal relationship we might have. There would always be questions about favoritism, about whether my position was earned. Alexander nodded slowly. I hadn't considered that perspective. So where does that leave us? I have a counter-proposal. She met his gaze steadily. Phoenix Solutions could enter into a long-term strategic partnership with Yates Industries. I would oversee the implementation of the turnaround plan, but as an independent consultant, not an employee. That maintains professional boundaries while allowing me to see this through. And personally, he asked, his voice softening. Sophia stepped closer, her professional reserve finally giving way to what her heart had been telling her for days. Personally, I think I'm falling for you too, Alexander Yates, and I'd very much like to explore that without the complications of being your employee. The smile that spread across his face was radiant. That sounds like an excellent strategy, Miss Greenfield. I thought you might approve, Mr. Yates. He closed the distance between them, one hand gently cupping her cheek. May I? He whispered. Her answer was to lean forward, meeting his lips with hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a certainty that made her pulse race. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. I hired you to save my company, he said softly. I never expected you'd save me too. 6 months later, Yates Industries had made a remarkable turnaround. The security division that Marcus Reynolds had tried to acquire was now the company's fastest-growing segment, with innovative products receiving industry acclaim. Employee satisfaction scores had risen dramatically, and the company's stock price had increased by nearly 40%. Sophia's consulting firm had expanded to handle the ongoing partnership with Yates Industries, while still maintaining other clients. The arrangement had worked better than either of them had imagined, allowing her to maintain her professional independence while remaining deeply involved in the company's strategic direction. But the most significant change had been personal. What began as cautious dates after the consultation ended had blossomed into a relationship built on mutual respect, shared values, and deepening love. On a crisp autumn evening almost exactly a year after they first met, Alexander took Sophia back to the riverfront where he had first confessed his feelings. As they stood watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson, he took her hand. "You know, for a man who built a career on calculated risk assessment, falling in love with you was the biggest leap of faith I've ever taken." He smiled, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. "Also the best decision I've ever made, better than hiring me as your consultant." She teased, "Infinitely better, though that was a close second." His expression grew more serious as he reached into his pocket and lowered himself to one knee. "Sophia Greenfield, you came into my life when everything was falling apart, and somehow you put it all back together: my company, my perspective, and most importantly, my heart." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as he opened a small velvet box to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring. "I love you," he continued, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Your brilliance, your compassion, your unwavering belief in possibilities. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, her heart overflowing. "Yes, Alexander." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, Sophia marveled at the journey that had brought them here. She had come to Yates Industries to save a failing business, never imagining she would find her heart's home in the process. Later that evening, as they celebrated with champagne in Alexander's penthouse overlooking the city where it all began, he raised his glass in a toast. "To unexpected beginnings." Sophia smiled, leaning into his embrace, "and to beautiful futures built together." The city lights twinkled below them, a fitting metaphor for the bright future ahead, a future neither of them had anticipated that first day when a determined consultant walked into a struggling CEO's office. Both of them, unaware that they were about to find not just professional success, but the kind of love that transforms everything it touches.